Look, I'd like to invite Ben Hooper to come up. Ben is our first Averist to do an Nuffield scholarship, and so yeah, Ben, take it away.
Thank you very much, Rob. I'd just like to take this opportunity to apologise in advance for any wrongdoings participants of my industry have caused you. I'm sure later on this afternoon you'll all be lining up to tell me your bad stories. Unfortunately, part of our industry is a very low capital investment to get into, so we kind of attract all comers, so apologise in advance. Okay, well, good afternoon and welcome back from lunch. I am Ben Hooper from Tintinara, and I'm here to talk to you about the wonderful world of making honey. Firstly, I would like to acknowledge my sponsors for their tremendous support, not only the financial contribution but the ongoing support, particularly RIDIC, Rural Industries Research and Development Corporation. For those of you who don't know what RIDIC is, it's an alliance of industries that can't stand alone, can't support themselves. So RIDIC covers us in the honeybee industry because we are quite small. Also, I would like to thank Nuffield Australia for their direct involvement in my scholarship and allowing me to become the first beekeeper to join the community. Firstly, I'll just take this chance to take a quick snapshot of the Australian apiary industry. There are around 9,600 registered beekeepers, collectively managing around 600,000 hives. Together we produce about 30,000 metric tonnes of honey, of which 1/3 is normally exported. Collectively, we have a very minute gross value production of about $80 million. We are a very, very small industry. Of that 30,000 annual tonne crop, 65% is produced by less than 250 businesses. Very small. The entire industry employs less than 3,000 full-time positions. So I've painted how small we are, yet I don't want to undermine our reliance to the wider agricultural community and in particular food security. And we achieve this through pollination. CSIRO estimates that 1 in 3 mouthfuls of every bit of food we consume in Australia is a direct result of the honeybee. Honeybee pollination provides significant value to Australian horticulture and agriculture, with services being valued at $3.8 billion for the topmost 35 pollination dependent crops. So our value is only realised through its ability as a pollinator, not obviously as producing honey. So back to my own business. I'm just situated down the road 200 kilometres at Tintinara. I operate my own business as well as managing my family operation. Together we manage 1,300 hives for both bulk honey production and pollination. Our behaviour is best described as nomadic. We very rarely follow the same pattern or work the same crops year in, year out. We operate in a radius of around 350 kilometres from our base at Tintinara. Currently our hives have just come out of paid pollination services in the almond groves, and half the operation is up in the north trying to make our premium line of honey, which is the eucalypt honey. The other half is back down around our base pollinating canola and beans and trying to make some of that lucrative manuka honey. So, lucrative, I mean the difference of, depending on how the honey tests, it could range between $3 to $30 a kilo. We require about 16,000 hectares of land for foraging to feed our bees. Now this is derived from both private and public lands. We have a very strong reliance on the goodwill of landholders to provide us access to those resources. Our business consists of about 85% bulk honey and the other 15% coming from pollination. On the honey side of things, we use a purpose-built mobile extracting facility. Fortunately, honey is one of the best products you can work with in the world. It's very pure and it's the only food that does not spoil, never spoils. So the mobile extracting facility is a very labour-intensive process, but it's a very efficient system for harvesting our honey. It is a very effective barrier system as well for controlling pests and diseases, as well as maintaining a high quality standard as we are producing food. Our honey is sold into a cooperative, Capilano, for which we are large shareholders. Capilano It's a fantastic company. It's done great things like produce the upside down squeeze pack with no drip. We also have fantastic catchphrases like squeeze me honey, honey, squeeze me. We struggle. Capilano, however, is a household brand name in the marketplace in Australia. So throughout our honey production, it is imperative that our hives are as strong as possible during summer. So to achieve this, in each colony, we have around 60,000 plus bees. So during summer, in the peak honey periods, those hives have the ability to put on around 2.5 kilograms per day, which is quite an exceptional weight gain. As each bee in its lifetime will probably only produce around 1 teaspoon of honey. So as our honey is sold in bulk in 1,000 litre shuttles, so it takes a hell of a lot of bees to make one of those shuttles. This is all based around the ability of our queens. We invest a lot of money into our queen stock. It's imperative that we have a young, vigorous queen to ensure that population is at a peak level to optimise our ability to make honey. The queen is in charge of the very intricate social network inside the hive. She controls the 60,000 population, which are all females, because we don't need the males as we buy our queen stock already pre-mated. The queen has the ability to lay around 2,000 eggs a day to help maintain this population, which is quite an achievement. It's a bit more than 2 times our own weight in eggs a day. So, much like a general farmer would go and buy a bull from a stud or a ram from a ram stud, we too buy our queens from a stud queen breeder. Logistically, however, they are much easier to move. As simply arrive in the post every week, and providing the post office lady doesn't spray for flies, we're good to go. Now, on the pollination side of things, whilst it is the smaller facet of our business, it certainly has the most potential to grow, and it is growing. At the moment, apart from the horticultural crops that are 100% reliant on the honeybees to produce their crop, in which they would pay us, most of the pollination we provide coincides with making the honey. So there is some new research coming out from the CSIRO to try and equate how much value these honeybees can make specifically to agricultural crops, in particular beans and canola. Okay, back to my study topic. Currently in Australia, we operate in an environment which is just you cannot find anywhere else in the world. It is a beautiful place to do what we do. Unfortunately, however, there are many exotic pests and diseases literally lapping at our shores, waiting to undermine exactly what we do, how we do it. So I'll begin. There are many out there, and I'll only concentrate on 2 and try and be brief with them. I'll start with the Asian bee. We are currently losing our battle to eradicate the Asian bee, which is situated up here on your right. However, it looks very similar to the European honeybee on the left. Its behavioural traits are very different. It is a very poor pollinator. It has, unlike the normal honeybee that swarms once a year, unfortunately it's this time of the year, it would throw off more than a dozen swarms a year, making it physically impossible to control. We can't apply basic animal husbandry skills to it. It is also very aggressive. It robs the resources that the normal bees, native bees, and our European honeybees would use. It also has an extremely high public nuisance value. And unfortunately, when the consultative committee decides whether or not this pest is able to be eradicated, they do not take into consideration future effects to industry and economy. So the single cost to the economy, which is estimated at $25 million per annum, that's just to kill the swarms that are invading urbanised areas, let alone what it will do to pollination. And the big one, unfortunately, you cannot put a cost on it. However, it is the natural host to the parasitic mite, varroa. You may have heard about this mite. It is the bad little bugger. It has the most profound economic effect on the international beekeeping community. In the last 30 years, it has more than halved the world population of bees. As far as size goes, this is a very large parasitic mite. It's on your finger is tiny, but on the bee, to put it in perspective, on a human it would be like carrying a basketball around. It simply sucks the life out of the bees, either killing it by sucking the life out of it, or weakening its immune system to the point where it can no longer fight a common cold. taking the time to look at a distribution map. Bring it back. The mite was found completely on the Asian bee, the one I mentioned, until about 25 years ago when it mutated and crossed onto the European honeybee and literally spread the world over very rapidly, causing a great deal of grief. So the map will kind of show that Australia is the only place, the only commercial beekeeping country that does not have varroa. There are areas in Africa, but it's just due to lack of information. It's certainly a significant problem in the south and the north, and I'm sure it would be in between. It's just that they don't have a beekeeping industry. So we have Australia, the only place left without it. Okay, what are they guys doing about varroa mite overseas? There's been a cupboard of tools to deal with this pest. Unfortunately, the cupboard is bare, and the last remaining option is an agricultural strength insecticide, Amatrace. And it is beginning to not work. They are running out of options. The international beekeeping industry is scrambling to try and keep up with this pest. Throughout the United States of America, I was dumbfounded to see how crude the applications of this chemical have become. The reality of this pest is far worse than the hysteria that I've been told about here in Australia. The information simply didn't tell me how bad it really was. These guys are out of options. Last year, the US treated their colonies, just to keep them long enough alive to do the paid pollination contracts, with an illegal chemical. The chemical came into the country on an illegal EPA, a fake EPA, and under a fake mother company. So they had just got no option. The government allowed them to use this, to still continue to use it. The use of this chemical has done two major things. It has created very significant residue issues in their honey. However, most of the rest of the world does not rely on honey as their main source of income. They have pollination, so it's merely a waste product, a byproduct that they don't need. So with the residue issues, however, they've become so systemic that the bees can no longer live in the houses that the beekeepers provide for them. Here in Australia, our equipment would last about 25 to 30 years. They're having to burn theirs after 4 years. They simply cannot live in the boxes that they provide for them. Secondly, they've very, very quickly selected strong resistance, and that's why the chemicals are no longer working. It's not just confined to the United States. Everywhere I visited was a similar problem. China, as it is with many things, is the largest producer of honey in the world. However, a large beekeeper would have about 50 hives. So they are feeding their bees medicine, and you cannot find out what's in the medicine. I recently met with a pharmaceutical company from China that is selling these products, and they will not give you any information and enlighten you to whatever's in it. So it deems it useless to us. We're not allowed to use it here, it simply can't. But it would be something along the lines of the Amatrace. I have a friend in the UK who lost 80% of his hives last year. And then, fortunately, he received a subsidy from the government, from the EU, to replace his hives, and they're just simply popping up markets. It's a nasty little circle we've got ourselves in. The largest beekeeper I visited in America lost 40,000 hives last year. That's 2 in every 3 in this whole state. Our friends in New Zealand, who have probably done the best job of trying to deal with this, unfortunately have reached their point of strong resistance in 10 years, half the time it took the Americans to get there. Nothing is working. Okay, how is it going to affect when it gets to Australia? It's only a matter of time until it gets here. It's inevitable, and we'd be naive to think we could keep it out. New Zealand invested millions of dollars trying to keep it out of their South Island after it arrived in the north. The significant difference here in Australia is that our seasons are nearly twice as long, our production time is twice as long as any other country, which means we're going to have to deal with this pest for twice as long. We also have no alternative industries to rely on, like the New Zealanders have. They would be paid a pollination contract of around $200 to do the avocados, and then $200 into the kiwi fruit. This can prop up a honey market, as well as the Americans can rely on the blueberries as well as almonds, and the Canadians, they have the hybrid seed industry. In Australia, we will still have to remain bulk honey producers. The treatments all our treatment options leave residues and cannot be used when making honey. So this promotes as a very significant issue for us in the future. there's going to be a lot of short-term pain, there's no doubt about it. You cannot eradicate this pest. On detection, it's stated that it's probably already been in the country for 2 years, so we're not going to be able to eradicate it. And simply, our control options are far less than favourable. There's no doubt about that. We'll most likely receive a resistant strand, which puts us right where everyone else is. We need to formulate a plan of attack of a completely different strategy. There is some small hope out there. I did see some shining lights, and I would have to say my Canadian experience was the best. They attempted to adopt in some form an IPM philosophy. By that, they established an economic threshold at which the mites could live in the hive, so they weren't aiming to completely decimate these parasite populations. So after establishing that mite population, they also had the willingness to test this mite population. I was dumbfounded to find that everywhere we went was just regimented treatment of the chemical. So there was they had no idea at what level, they just knew that they were going to cause destruction, so they were just killing them. The Canadians do lots of testing, so they're finding out that they don't always need to use the amatraz to kill the mite population. Okay, I also discovered through North America the concept of cold storage, and it's probably what I focus most of my study on. The concept is, well, I've been laughed at, pointed at, shaken, slapped around. People just can't believe in the apiary industry that I've gone to look at this. The simple reason is why I think that there's something that we need to consider is that in the colony, the bees breed, and for a colony that has brood, babies, half the year round, the mite population will only increase 12-fold. Like in Australia, when we have brood the whole year round, the mite population will increase 600-fold. We need to find a way to break the breeding cycle and break the natural host for variety. So, cold storage, inducing dormancy. These guys in America were hibernating their hives for 3 to 5 months, which is a significant period of time. It's a very large shed. Some were purpose-built, some were utilising potato stores, old orange refrigeration cool rooms, and constant state of 4 degrees, creating a complete state of dormancy where the bees are not breeding. This also creates an environment where we can use alternative treatments. And by alternative treatments, to kill this parasite, I'm referring to organic treatments. In Australia, our environment does not allow us to use organics. They are very volatile and they are very heat sensitive. An average temperature during the day does not allow us to use this. And then have the bumblebee. So they have a commercial alternative to use for their pollination. We do not here. So we'll find that simple backyard veggie gardens will simply not produce any vegetables. They will produce vegetables, but they'll be of very poor quality, stunted growth, and just simply won't be able to operate like they were. Now, through all this doom and gloom, there is a hope, and that's, for me, is an opportunity for pollination. If I can formulate some form of plan to be able to keep my bees alive, I will be able to probably make more money through pollination than I will from being a bulk honey producer. The shining light, however, is through the breeding. Currently, queen bee breeders are very good at selecting hygienic behaviour. However, you can only take this so far, as hygienic behaviour in a queen bee can be bred to an extent where it undermines the ultimate population, where it just continually removes and picks on all those weak cells that have been attacked by the varroa mite to a stage where they can no longer reproduce. Also, the use of organics. There's no other country that are using the organics to the extent that I believe that we will have to use them. And a simple one for us is the ability to drone harvest. Because we have such a long season and we're continuously in our hives, we have the ability to remove the drones. The drones are the male populations that we currently don't have in our boxes, but we can breed because the varroa mite prefers to breed on the males rather than the females. The major one, the big hope that we do have, is the gene technology. They have recently mapped the genome of the bee and are doing fantastic work with trying to switch some genes off. Here, Dr. Dennis Anderson, who was an Australian from the CSIRO, is the leading entomologist for varroa mite, and he's a fantastic resource for us. Secondly, Dr. Jamie Ellis, who I met in Florida, from Florida University. is actually beginning to trial his new species of bees after he switched these genes off. He switched the signal off that promotes the varroa mite to go in the cell and lay an egg to continue production. So he's hoping to conduct trials in the next few months to see how this will go. Ultimately, it's going to be a nasty road, and I'm looking forward to the challenge. Thank you. I'd like to thank my comrades who I travelled with, my family for their fantastic support, and Nuffield Australia for allowing me to go on this event. Thank you.
So we've got a few minutes for questions, so I might start off. Look, Ben, with all the problems going on in the world and the varroa mite very much affecting production, I mean, what is going to happen in honey production? Are we going to see, if it comes into Australia, we're going to see a big spike in honey prices, or is it just not going to matter?
It probably won't make that much difference in Australia. I mean, we normally would produce 1/3 extra than what we domestically consume, and China, as the largest producer, are trying to ramp up their production. However, it's it's an inferior product. It's a lot of artificial beekeeping overseas. Everything's fed, so they're fed a large degree of sugar syrup, so it doesn't even actually constitute honey. Some of the product they're delivering and dumping on the world market, it's essentially dark sugar syrup.
You said we haven't got any alternative pollinators. There's been quite a lot of talk about native bees and things like that. Can you just put us in the picture? Obviously, I appreciate they're not useful for the honey, but...
Yes, commercial pollinators, sorry. There's no commercial... The bumblebees are bred everywhere else in the world as an alternative pollinator, commercial breeding. There are 300 different species of native bees in Australia, of which they're trying to work with them. They're solitary insects and they're very hard to breed at a commercial to produce, to pollinate an agricultural crop. There's not enough numbers. They're way off developing those native bees.
Any other insects on the horizon?
No.
So one other, Ben, is our native bee in Australia, is that going to be affected the same way?
No, they're specifically to the Asian bee and the European honeybee.
I hate to bring this up, and it's only because nobody else is asking questions, but I've stopped buying Capilano honey because I was told that a lot of it was imported from China. So do we import? And if so, do we import from China?
By we, you mean Australians? Yes, we do. Australia's been in a state of underproduction for around 10 years now. It's purely to do with seasonal behaviours. Like there's obviously been a very large drought over much of the country. The East Coast is the largest producer, and they've been down for about 10 years. So we have had to import honey to fill domestic contracts. And yes, some of it did come in from China and continues to come in from China. It's around 5,000 tonnes. Did Capilano bring in Chinese honey? I'm not going to go there. We do not pack any Chinese honey in the Capilano label, so you're misled. There are packers in Australia that do use it though.
We've got time for one more question. No? Ben, thank you very much. I'll ask Terry to come up and do the plaque, and if we could please put our hands together for Ben.